Dragon Ball Daima is something I can't say I was super excited for when I first started hearing about it. Not because I thought it looked uninteresting per se, but because the marketing for this show was abysmally bad. They dropped like 3 trailers with basically the exact same footage, and I had no idea what the show was going to be about, aside from the fact that everyone was going to be turned into kids, then Goku and Kaioshin were gonna go on an adventure.
Okay.
But there was one thing that I kept getting reminded of over and over again that made me 100% certain that I had to watch this show and made me confident in its quality, which is that Akira Toriyama was very involved in the creation process. For me, I haven't really loved any Dragon Ball content that's been released outside of the original manga. There are a few parts of things I like here and there, and some products I think are great, but nothing has ever come close to the original for me, which is of course because Toriyama was very minimally involved in any other Dragon Ball project, like Dragon Ball Super. So, was this show able to achieve the same quality as the original manga with Toriyama's contributions? Well... they really weren't lying when they said Toriyama was involved, because you can feel his input.
Make me feel like Spider-Man.
And a lot of it is incredibly good, like a lot of the character designs, certain dialogue, and most importantly the humor, because this show is legitimately funny. It doesn't land all the time, but when it lands, it lands. Like basically all of Hybisa's dialogue is hilarious, everything with this Minotaur, the Gendarmerie Force. It's clear that Toriyama never lost touch with writing comedy. But this highlights the exact issue that this show has, which is that while it's clear Toriyama was the most involved he's ever been in a Dragon Ball project since the original, it's also clear that he wasn't 100% involved, or even close to it, maybe like 50% at best. And the other 50% is by Toei. Now, of course, I don't have any proof of what Toriyama wrote and what Toei wrote, and I'm not saying everything Toriyama contributed is amazing necessarily, but I think there is a distinct shift in both quality and style in the writing at several points, like for example, the action. It's clear that Toriyama most likely contributed very little to the major fights like he's done in the past and was like, alright, you guys handle that shit, just do like a big ass fight or something. And the writers that are left to handle it are truly ass. Like the Vegeta versus Tamagami 2 fight. This is such a boring fight. I genuinely struggle to stay awake. And it's mainly 2 reasons for that. One is that there is no story behind the fight, it's just action. The Tamagami has no personality, nothing interesting to say, he's just something Vegeta can fight. And the fight isn't even creative. Like there's a moment where Vegeta almost gets eaten by a fucking Kraken mid-fight, but Vegeta locks in and flies away. Then Tamagami 2 smacks him with a staff thingy and Vegeta falls back and gets eaten by the Kraken. Then the next episode starts and he got out of it off screen. Then 1 minute later he gets eaten again and then immediately gets out. And that's the last we see of this Kraken ever.
That shit is fucking trash, dog.
And this is the case for most of the big fights. I didn't even like the Super Saiyan 4 fights for this exact same reason. There's no story there as Goma is just so mid and most of the fight isn't even choreographed well. I really like some of the stuff when it's first revealed, like how Goku uses his tail and moves around like he's fucking Tarzan. It's really fitting with the transformation and I like how they made him so monkey-like, but it only happens a few times. The final fight between Goku and Goma is animated really well, but I just don't care when all that's happening is person 1 punches person 2, then person 2 punches person 1, then person 1 punches person 2, then person 2 shoots ki blast. It's just so boring and I refuse to believe Toriyama had any involvement in these fights because that's just not how he did them in the manga. He would always incorporate the story in his fights with real care, but it's clear his interests in doing that were long gone, so he just left it to the rest of the team. These types of fights that drop all of that and only focus on being well animated can only work in very specific scenarios for me, like the Broly movie, and even there I had a few problems with it. There is only one proper fight that I actually thought was really good, which just so happens to be the one fight that is heavily tied to a gag. Super Saiyan 3 Vegeta versus Goma. This fight is so fucking good. I'm not even a massive Vegeta fan or anything compared to Goku, but like, man, everything here just works. And it works because there's actually a story being told here. What happens when a stubborn and proud old man meets an immovable force, a force that is impossible to defeat alone? Well, the stubborn old man just keeps fighting, but if he keeps fighting without giving up, he'll die. So how do we get the old man to stop? By making one of the best jokes in all of Dragon Ball.
I'm stepping aside. You two can take it from here.
There's some really good choreography in this fight, and the shots are super creative. There are a few instances where they just kind of shoot ki blasts at each other and nothing interesting really happens, but it's only a few times. And I love when Vegeta does his final flash. When Goku does his Kamehameha against Goma at the end, that's just Goku doing his best attack because they need to beat the bad guy. But this is Vegeta putting his all into the strongest attack he has because he's too stubborn to lose. His pride won't allow that to happen, and this is like his final gamble, just like Vegeta versus Cell. Once again, the story is tied into the fight. And once again, I'm sure this sequence only came together like this because Toriyama wanted to include that joke at the end. There seems to be this fundamental difference in approach multiple times throughout the series where it feels like Toriyama and the other writers are not on the same page when it comes to certain decisions, and I think this is the most apparent with episode 15 and 16. Episode 15 is the worst episode of Daima by far. This thing is terrible. In the episode, Goku and the others have to fight soldiers with guns. The whole episode. Yes, there is actually 20 minutes of this because Goku and the gang can't beat soldiers with laser guns. The explanation for this is that the guns shoot very powerful blasts, and if you get shot more than once, you'll die. But can't they just dodge the blasts?
Why didn't you die?
Are they like really fast lasers or something? They don't look that fast. Hybus has no trouble dodging them at the start of the episode. Can Goku and Vegeta, who can move faster than the speed of light, really not dodge them? Later on in the episode, when they get back up from King Kadon, all of a sudden they have no trouble dodging them and just shit all over the soldiers. Why didn't the soldiers have these guns earlier in the show? Or did they have them? They look the exact same to me. This episode is terrible. But why did this happen? How did they mess up this bad? Well, it's clear the writers really wanted to make the first Demon World and Goma's forces feel strong and formidable, like a real threat, to the point where even regular soldiers were powerful. And then we get to the next episode, episode 16, where the gang has to fight Goma's strongest soldiers, his finest warriors, the Gendarmerie Force. And they absolutely body them in like 2 minutes. It's literally treated like a joke how easy it is to beat them, not because the Gendarmerie Force are weak per se, but because Goku and the others are just that strong. Do you see the difference here? We spent 20 whole minutes struggling to fight soldiers with guns, but take out the strongest soldiers in 2 minutes. This is the difference in approach I was talking about. Toriyama wants to make fun gag fights where Goku and Ko win with ease. He knows these guys are way too powerful to get stopped by normal opponents, but the writers want to make everything feel like a challenge. They want stakes, tension. And that is a terrible approach, because this show wants to be like early Dragon Ball, and that was not the approach that was taken there. This show has a real problem figuring out what it wants to be. I just pointed out the difference in approach in episode 15 and 16, but this can be felt with the show as a whole. In the start of the show, it's clear that it wants to be similar to the Pilaf saga in early Dragon Ball. Now, I know that the Pilaf saga maybe isn't the most popular part of Dragon Ball, but in my opinion, I think that arc functions incredibly well as a story. Everything in that arc has a purpose, every character has a role, every mechanic gets utilized, everything that happens is relevant and gets paid off later in the story. It just works. For example, Goku is the muscle, Bulma is the brains, and Oolong is utility. Whenever there's a strong enemy, Goku can fight it and protect the others and the Dragon Balls. But Goku isn't always smart enough to know what to do, so he has Bulma there to guide him. Bulma is always there to guide the group and help out with gadgets and vehicles. Oolong can transform to help out in very specific scenarios, like when he flies out of the wall to make the wish with the Dragon Balls, or transform into Bulma for various purposes. Every character in the party is necessary for the story to work because they all offer a unique set of skills. Now let's look at Daima. Goku is still the muscle, of course. If they need to beat up some people, he's there. But Glorio is also the muscle. And Shin is also the muscle. And Pansy actually knows how to fight fairly well, so they're all the muscle. But of course, Pansy isn't that strong and is supposed to be the brains. But Glorio is also pretty smart and knowledgeable about the demon realm, and Shin is also pretty smart. Now, what is Shin's role actually supposed to be? Nothing. He doesn't have a role. He doesn't serve any purpose. He's just there for the ride. I have no idea why Shin is in the story at all because he never actually does anything important. And so because everyone is really strong, they just kind of go around doing what they want, beating up anyone they see. They never have to protect the weak party members because there are no weak party members. And about halfway through the story, the party gets even bigger and now we have even more muscle, more brains, more people that just stand around doing nothing. And most of the places we go to and characters we meet aren't relevant to the story. Once again, in the Pilaf saga, wherever we went was relevant to something. Like when we meet the turtle. Bulma wants to leave it, but Goku wants to help it. And because he helps it, they meet Master Roshi, who gives them both a Dragon Ball. And later when they need help, they go to him and he fixes it. And because of this, Goku learns the Kamehameha, which he later uses to make a hole in the wall so that Oolong can fly through it and make the wish. But Master Roshi doesn't want to do it for free. He wants some compensation. And because Bulma doesn't want to do that, we have Oolong there to transform. He also gives them the Nimbus, but because Bulma isn't pure-hearted, she can't ride it and they need vehicles, which is where Yamcha comes in to give him some. There is so much content in Daima that you could take out, and the story would be the exact same. There's this one episode where they go to this hotel where there are some thieves that can transform or shapeshift, and these guys steal the gang's Dragon Ball. But Pansy reveals she has a tracker on the ball, so they just find it and get it back. Now, never again in the story do we ever see anyone from the demon world transform in this way, and we never have to use Pansy's tracker ever. Again, we could completely remove this whole segment and nothing would change. Another example is the fusion bugs. I don't really have to explain this one. I have absolutely no idea why these were introduced. It's truly baffling. And maybe even worse than that, we have the usage of planes. In the original, even the vehicles served different purposes depending on what type of transportation it was. When they use a boat, that creates a perfect chance for Oolong to escape into the water. Or when they get this minibus, because it's so spacious, it allows the different characters to split up and create confusion and misdirection in regards to who is where. This wouldn't have worked in a normal car. Now let's compare this to Daima, where almost every single plane is the exact same, and the way they function in the story is so contrived. I swear the gang crashed their ship like 10 times just so we can go to the surface and get up to some random shenanigans in the demon world. Like there's this one time where they crashed their ship and 2 gendarmerie officers show up in their ship to do an inspection. Now I thought, oh, they can just beat up the soldiers and steal their ships, right? But no, they just wait for the officers to leave, then they repair their own ship and fly off again. But then in a later episode, their ship breaks again, and because they end up beating up a bunch of gendarmerie officers, they just give up on their own ship and take theirs instead.
This is not right. This is not cool. This is fucking bullshit.
It's bizarre to me that they couldn't figure out a more natural way for the characters to get out of their ship. I think there's only one other time they use a different type of transportation, which is the Sky Seed. And I actually thought this was a really fun scene. The Sky Seed is a very good idea, and I like the way it can only be used once. But again, after we've been introduced to them, we never see them again. The gang never uses them. There was also somewhat of a focus on Goku getting stronger, like when he learns the Kamehameha, but there is nothing like this in Daima. No one gets stronger, no one learns anything new. Vegeta had already learned the Super Saiyan 3 off screen, so the only example of this is Super Saiyan 4, which is comparable to Goku becoming the Osaru for the first time, but still, it's just not the same quality wise. The Osaru reveal was foreshadowed again and again throughout the arc, like Goku's introduction being him with a tail hanging out with monkeys, or the mystery of his grandpa's death, so much so that by the time it happens, you pretty much already expected it. For Super Saiyan 4, on the other hand, Neva legit just walks up to Goku and gives him the transformation out of nowhere without any build-up or foreshadowing. But then at the end, Goku's just like, oh, yeah, I was training to get Super Saiyan 4 this whole time, I just didn't know if it would work. keep in mind, Akira Toriyama made up Dragon Ball as he went along and was still able to substantially foreshadow the Osaru. Dragon Ball Daima started being developed in 2019. I'm a big fan of Super Saiyan 4 and GT, both the design and also how it comes about, so I'm very glad they included it in Daima, but I don't think it should have been like this. Honestly, if they just dropped the whole Never Awaken Super Saiyan 4 thing and instead we don't have Goku transform into it until his final fight between Goma as he's showing off all of his transformations, I think that would have been way more fulfilling. It still wouldn't have been foreshadowed, but at least now it will feel more intentional. Like, the reason he couldn't go Super Saiyan 4 before this was because he was in his kid form, but now that he's an adult, he can just about do it. It would effectively be almost the same as when he shows off Super Saiyan 3 for the first time. It would also make the kid forms feel like they actually restrict our characters, because this show has a real problem with that. I think a big problem with this show is that it wants to be like early Dragon Ball, but also kind of wants to be like C, and they never really find a good balance between the two, which is why we get stuff like the stupid gunfight episode I talked about earlier, but like 2 episodes after that we're doing shit like this. Now, of course, this show starts off with turning Goku and the rest into kids, but I don't really get why. The reason given in the show is that they wanted them to be weaker, and yeah, I mean, if you want a more grounded story, I guess I can see that. But they could have been in their adult form for the whole story, and I don't think there would have been any difference, because Goku beats up literally everyone we meet at all times. He beats up all the normal soldiers and thugs we meet, and when we get to the Tamagami, he beats them with relative ease and only needs to go Super Saiyan 1. The only time this isn't the case is in the final battle with Goma, but even then, the fight with Kid Goku versus Goma looks basically the exact same as adult Goku versus Goma. Like, I actually cannot even tell Goku got stronger from this. At first, the reason was to remove their ability to fly, which I thought would make sense as it would put a bigger emphasis on different transportation, but Goku literally learns how to fly again in the exact same episode he turns into a kid, episode 2. But right after they learn how to fly again, they get to the demon world and they can't fly after all because the air is so bad there. But they're flying just fine here, so I don't really get it. Can they fly or not? It really feels like the writers wanted to make them kids again to make everything challenging and dangerous, but nothing is challenging. They don't even bother going Super Saiyan until it's like absolutely necessary. So this show is basically a direct continuation of the Buu saga. There was a lot of confusion about when in the timeline this show would take place and if it would adhere to the canon or not, and I couldn't be more happy to say that this show says fuck you to Dragon Ball Super. This show basically says, okay, all that other shit we've been feeding you for the past decade, that shit didn't happen. This is the actual continuation of the Buu saga. Super Saiyan Blue? That's stupid. That's dumb. No one likes that. Super Saiyan 4? Everyone likes that. Add that shit in the story. Daima could not be less concerned about what happens in Super, how its events lines up with theirs, and I am so incredibly happy for that. I really don't get why people have this fixation on the word canon in this situation, because Dragon Ball has always had a bunch of different continuities. If you're mad at Daima for not lining up with Super, then you should be mad at Super for even existing, because Super doesn't line up with GT at all. Of course, GT isn't canon, but it doesn't even line up with the original manga, and even Super isn't consistent with itself. The anime and manga have so many differences, but they're both canon. Trunks doing the dumbass Spirit Bomb sword in the anime doesn't happen in the manga, and even the anime has conflicting continuities, like it has 2 different versions of these arcs, one movie version and one anime version, that have big differences. Battle of Gods has 3 different versions of itself, the movie, the anime, and the manga. So who gives a shit that Daima doesn't line up with Super? It was clearly never trying to do so in the first place. It's clear that this is supposed to be like an alternate timeline of Dragon Ball that continues off of the Buu saga, and I would much rather prefer it if they took this approach going forward. This is exactly what they do in DC and Marvel. They make some movies or comics with a character, then a few years later they're like, okay, now let's do it again, but different. Just look at all the different Spider-Mans. This is especially fitting for something like Dragon Ball because Dragon Ball fans are already so segmented. Some people only love early Dragon Dragon Ball, other people have only watched Z and nothing else, and there are probably a lot of kids that grew up only watching Dragon Ball Super. And this is much better because it means everyone will get a Dragon Ball sequel that they personally connect with. If you want a more adventure-centric story like early Dragon Ball, you choose Daima. If you want something that focuses heavily on action and fighting, you choose Super. And if you want more of a finale to tie the bow on the whole franchise, you choose GT. What baffled me is that people actually wanted more Dragon Ball Super over something like this.
Don't give us this! We don't want this! Nobody asked for this!
The number one argument from people that didn't want to see this show before it came out was that it looked like a show for babies, which is really ironic because that's exactly something a 5-year-old would say. I can't believe people said Daima was bad because it's for kids when, my brother in Christ, we are talking about Dragon Ball. You would think Dragon Ball was like fucking Attack on Titan or something with what people expect. Now that being said, the question still remains, is Daima a good continuation of the Buu saga? Yes it is, it's great. Daima takes an incredibly smart approach on how to continue the story, and I wish they would have done this years ago, by utilizing the demon world. This was basically the only way the story could have gone forward following the Buu saga, because the demon world has been foreshadowed for such a long time, and I love how this feels like a continuation of the Buu saga. Having Kaioshin be one of the main characters of the story might seem a bit weird, but then you remember that this is right after the Buu saga where he was first introduced and had an important role. That being said though, he definitely could have had a bigger role in the Buu saga, so the idea of including him here to give him that is perfect. Of course, he doesn't end up having a big role in Daima at all, but idea-wise it's great. Now if you've seen some of my other Dragon Ball videos, you'd know that I'm not a huge fan of how the Dragon Balls themselves have been utilized as the story has gone on. At this point, they basically just serve as a plot device that helps our heroes with literally anything they want, and gathering them is not difficult at all compared to the beginning when finding them was a legitimate challenge. This is of course because as the story went on, everyone got so strong that they can all gather them in like an hour. In fact, a lot of the newer Dragon Ball stuff doesn't really have anything to do with the Dragon Balls. Even if we go to the Buu and Cell saga, they're not really a huge focus as the action kinda takes center stage. But in Daima, we're back to hunting Dragon Balls. And I gotta say that it actually solves this issue in a very clever way, and this is one of the few aspects of the show that actually manages to merge the Pilaf saga and C in a seamless way. Instead of just having to pick up the Dragon Balls, we have to obtain them through action. This means that we will have to go through the journey to get them, but we can't actually have them without fighting. It's a great way to merge the earlier and later parts of Dragon Ball, especially so because there are only 3 Dragon Balls. More than that would have been way too formulaic and repetitive. It's a bit strange that this isn't the goal from the beginning though. Like there's a good chunk of episodes at the beginning where we're just kind of exploring the demon realm trying to reach Goma. Then Goku's like, yo, what if we just like got the Dragon Balls instead? And everyone's just like, okay, yeah, sure. I feel like this should have been the goal from the start, but whatever. Now, despite me being very critical of Daima in this video, I do like this show. It's just that I don't really like how the story functions and is laid out as a whole apart from the comedy, and instead I like a lot of smaller individual moments. So I'm going to go through everything I really liked in Dragon Ball Daima in a mostly chronological order. Firstly, Goku. I wasn't blown away by him or anything, but I generally love how he acts in the story. The way he acts like a kid, but still feels like he's mentally on top in every situation. Every time we see him body a bunch of soldiers, it's super satisfying and fun, especially because the sequences are always so well animated. Number 2, everything with this Minotaur. This was maybe my favorite part of the show as a whole. This sequence is just hilarious. I love how he just slowly realizes that like, damn, I do not want to fuck with these guys. I honestly think this is the most Dragon Ball has felt like Dragon Ball since the original. Number 3, Goku versus the Tamagami. I wasn't really sure whether or not to include this one because of all the issues I pointed out with the action earlier, but it did have some pretty damn solid choreography and it was pretty fun, so okay. Number 4, Hybus. He is hilarious. I love his dumbass hat. He's just perfect. Number 5, Ultra Vegeta 1. Now, admittedly, he looks super goofy as a kid, but the adult version looks raw as fuck, and I'm so glad they made his hair this way instead of just copying Goku. And again, his fight against Goma is peak. Number 6, Majin Buu and Do. These two guys, especially honestly, Ku are both great characters, and they work really well paired up together. They gave a lot of good gags and made the direction of the story a whole lot less predictable. Number 8, the Gendarmerie Force, which I'm still not sure if I'm saying right.
The Gendarmerie!
At first, I thought these guys were just a complete Ginyu Force ripoff, but their dynamic is a lot different. I love the fact that they're not just stereotypical bad guys, but instead, when they fail, they're just like, oh, that's alright, everyone has their off days. These guys are genuinely like nice people, which was pretty refreshing to see after all the other soldiers we've met in Goma's army. Their fight against Vegeta is also one of the highlights of the show. I just love how he bodies all of them in the funniest ways possible, and that giant fireball was also hilarious. Number 9, Vegeta and Bulma. These two's dynamic and dialogue throughout the story is amazing. You can really feel that this is the Vegeta that has all of his character development from the Buu saga, and that his wife is his biggest priority in life. It's just such a fun dynamic that gives us an outlook on these two characters we haven't seen too much of before. And lastly, I'm just gonna say the whole last 2 episodes. I don't love absolutely everything in them. Again, I talked about the Super Saiyan 4 fight before, but also the way they all of a sudden find out you can beat Goma by hitting him in the back of the head 3 times. And there's some strange stuff with Arinsu where they just kind of let her go for some reason. But man, almost everything else is so damn good. Episode 19 is Vegeta versus Goma fight, so of course I like it, but I also really enjoyed Goku showing off his forms again, like he did in the Buu saga to buy time. It's some very tasteful fan service. Although, it's kind of weird that the entire time Goku is buying time, Piccolo isn't actually doing anything. Like, he's just hiding behind a rock, and then Goma coincidentally just falls towards him at some point, and Piccolo's just like, oh yes, this is my chance. Like, what the fuck have you been doing for the past 20 minutes? But yeah, episode 20 is generally really good. I love Ku becoming the Demon King. I love Goku fixing the bad air in the first demon world they were at. I love Goku and Vegeta's conversation at the end. I love Ku asking if they want to help him in the demon realm, but Goku's just like,
nope, we just want to go home.
But I think my favorite moment in this episode comes from the person who has been possibly the least important to this story.
Supreme Demon King Ku, huh? A new era begins. No objections here.
This shit means something to me, man.
I am very grateful to whoever put this dialogue in. Knowing everything Piccolo has been through and where he is now compared to when he started, for him to say this here is really rewarding. He didn't really have anything to do with this story, but it was still some very good dialogue. There is a lot of stuff to like about Daima, which is why it's so frustrating that the story didn't come together in a better way. There are certain decisions taken that really confuse me, and I think if I got to make some changes to the story, there's a few things that will come to mind. I want to try to make some suggestions as to how I think the story could have worked by doing a few changes. Because there is so much good stuff in Daima, but there are a few things here and there that while they are pretty big issues, they're also fairly easy to fix. To be clear though, I am not saying these changes would have made the story better per se, but they would have made them better for me. First and foremost, because this show wants the main characters to be children and this show is aimed at children, we're gonna make the main characters Goten and Trunks instead of Goku. Because, you know, they're already kids. They had such a big role in the Buu saga, so taking them completely out of the picture here seems like a bit of a strange decision. This is for sure the biggest change I'm making, but I think this will work better for a number of reasons. We're also just gonna remove their ability to fly completely. This will make it so when they crash their ship, it actually feels like a more desperate situation. Also, Supreme Kai, he's not gonna be there. Maybe he can show up later or something towards the end, but he never really has any good reasons to be in the story, and I want to keep the party as small as possible at the start. Therefore, we're also not gonna have Glorio show up immediately. The first person they're gonna meet instead is Pansy. So, Goten and Trunks are gonna be the muscle, but in keeping with the Buu arc, Trunks is gonna be more experienced and street smart. Then they meet Pansy, who's gonna be the brains. She can fix their vehicles, although we're definitely gonna add some variety to them instead of just the same ship over and over again. She's also gonna be their sole information source about the demon world and how to navigate it. And remember Pansy's hacker friend? We're gonna take him out of the story story and give those hacking skills to Pansy instead to make her more useful. Also, we're gonna make it so that when they get to King Kadon's castle, it's gonna be attacked by a bunch of thugs or something, and Goten and Trunks can save them. This will make their appearance later on feel more meaningful, because I actually thought King Kadon showing up to save Goku and the others was a pretty cool moment as it tied back to earlier episodes, but this way it'll make even more sense. As for Glorio, he's just gonna be stalking them from the beginning portion of the show, maybe trying to get their Dragon Balls just like Yamcha. Then around the halfway point, he's gonna join them pretending to be their friend. But we're gonna give him the same ability Supreme Kai had, which was to break the collars of the demons. This was a really strange thing in the show because Shin breaks Pansy's collar, but he doesn't break anyone else's in the whole story. It was just this one time. Then at the end of the show, no one has a collar anymore for some reason. Again, we're gonna have Arinsu give him this ability so he can seem more trustworthy, but at the same time a bit suspicious. And with him, they're gonna go around freeing a bunch of demons, and by the time they leave to the second demon world, they're gonna be like their heroes. Also, another character I want to include in the story is Piccolo. He's gonna realize Goten and Trunks are gone, and as he tries to track them down, he ends up in the demon world as well. I think that if any character was to go after them, it was Piccolo. He's basically like all the kids' uncle, and it would continue the dynamic the three of them had previously. Now, I partially want to include Piccolo just so he can say that line at the end, but I also want to make it make sense in the story. So what we're gonna do to tie into previous lore and story is say that the reason Demon King Piccolo was called Demon King was because he was literally the Demon King in the demon world. After Kami and him split up into two, Piccolo escaped into the demon world and ruled there for a while before he came back to Earth. I'm not really sure if this technically retcons anything, but you can let me know down in the comments. Because he was called Demon King, I don't think this qualifies as a retcon, but it could be that this contradicts some previous information. I don't know, I don't care. Basically, it's gonna be revealed that he was a terrible ruler and all the people feared him just like on Earth. And so when Piccolo goes there, shows his face and tells people his name, they're all gonna be fearing him as well. This will highlight just how far Piccolo has come since we first got introduced to him. But as he goes through the world, people will realize that he's actually kind of a chill guy. Piccolo is gonna go through all the areas Goten and Trunks pass through, but without Pansy's knowledge, meaning he's gonna be struggling a lot more until he finally catches up with them at the end. There's not gonna be a huge focus on him though, he's gonna be there mostly for gags. Like, it'll show Goten and Trunks succeeding, and then it'll cut to Piccolo struggling with some random monster or something. Now, one of the reasons why I think Goten and Trunks would work so well in this story is because of the same reason Vegeta vs. Goma works so well, the comedy. In the Buu Saga, all of their fights always had a ton of jokes and gags, especially with Gotenks. I mean, their fight with Super Buu is literally just joke after joke, even though Super Buu is like the most evil dude ever, and that's perfect for this show. Vegeta vs. Goma is how all the fights should have been, not just this one, but with Goten and Trunks, we can ensure that that's almost always the case. We're gonna say that at first, they don't quite remember how to do the dance right, so every time they do the fat and skinny fusion, but when they get to Goma, they're finally able to become the real Gotenks, which is gonna allow us to have plenty gags. Because Goma throughout Daima was treated as a joke the whole time, but right at the end, that kinda stopped, and he became this buff evil guy. Pilaf was never taken seriously in his arc, and so I think for the tone of this story, doing the same with Goma at the end as well will make sense. And with Gotenks, he actually has a reason to be more silly. Also, the eye thing he uses, we're gonna take that out of the story. I don't really hate it or anything, it's actually not too bad, but instead we're gonna give Goma the ability to transform, just like that one demon was able to do. But unlike him, he's gonna have even more transformations, kinda like Frieza. This will give a reason to why we're randomly shown this demon transforming, and this way we can also keep Super Saiyan 4 in the story. Gotenks is gonna start in his base form, then Super Saiyan 1, and then Super Saiyan 3. Goma, on the other hand, is gonna have his base form, then his second form, then his third form, and then finally his fourth form. And he's basically gonna one-up Gotenks, which Gotenks is gonna be really mad and salty about, so as a response, he's gonna charge up as hard as he can and turn Super Saiyan 4. I don't know, I'm really just spitballing here, but I think that could have been a funny gag while simultaneously inserting Super Saiyan 4 into the story in a more natural way. Also, for Goten and Trunks to even get to the final demon world to be able to fight Goma, instead of Neva just removing the barrier in the ground, we're gonna put the barrier in the sky and have it be so far up that the normal ships can't fly there, and instead, we're gonna use the sky seeds to launch them up there. Also, we'd have to fix the rest of the villains too. Goma is good enough as he is right now in my rewrite, but man, Degasu is truly one of the most laughable characters characters I have ever seen. His existence is mind-boggling. I still have absolutely no idea why he pointed a gun on this fucking baby and where the hell he was trying to go. What was his plan? What was he cooking? What an awful character. Arinsu also needs a bit of work because she is just a mess, and it's mainly because of her goal. The gang asks her if she wants to be a demon king like Degasu wanted to, and she's just like, what? Don't compare me to that fucking peasant. I don't want to do something that simple.
2 seconds later.
Our plan was to make me the Supreme Demon King with unparalleled magic power.
Is this nigga serious?
These two are so weird that I honestly don't even know how to fix them, so I'm just gonna call it quits there. These changes I think would have made the story more streamlined and purposeful and a more enjoyable experience for me. But again, I do still think Daima is pretty good. I think if you took out all the fluff that didn't need to be there, this could have been an 8 out of 10, but since we can't do that, I'm gonna give Daima a 7 out of 10. It's good, but I really wish it was better. What I did appreciate a lot though was how different this approach was to GT and Super. We now have 3 different sequels that all try to do something different, which is pretty cool, so check out this video to hear what I think about those two.